The sound of piano keys filled the empty music room as 12-year-old. Lily practiced the same piece for the 100th time that week. Her fingers moved across the keys like they were dancing, creating beautiful music that echoed through the hallways of Roosevelt Middle School. It was already past 4 in the afternoon, and most students had gone home hours ago, but Lily was still there, determined to perfect every single note. She had been playing piano since she was 5 years old. Her grandmother had taught her the basics on an old upright piano that sat in the corner of their small apartment. That piano had seen better days. Some keys stuck, others made strange buzzing sounds, and it was definitely out of tune. But it was their piano, and Lily loved it with all her heart. When Lily started middle school, she discovered the music room had a beautiful grand piano. It was nothing like the old one at home. This piano was perfectly tuned with keys that responded to her lightest touch. The first time she played it, she felt like she was in a dream. The music teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had been walking by and stopped dead in her tracks when she heard Lily playing. "Who is that?" Mrs. Patterson had whispered to herself, peeking into the music room. She saw this small girl sitting at the big piano, completely lost in the music. Her eyes were closed, and she was swaying gently with the rhythm. Mrs. Patterson had been teaching music for over 20 years, but she had never seen a student so naturally connected to music. From that day on, Mrs. Patterson became Lily's biggest supporter. She gave Lily permission to practice in the music room whenever she wanted. She even stayed after school, sometimes just to listen to Lily play. Mrs. Patterson would sit quietly in the corner, grading papers or preparing lessons, while Lily filled the room with beautiful melodies. Lily's parents worked 2 jobs, each just to pay the bills. Her mother cleaned offices at night, and her father worked at a factory during the day. They were proud of their daughter's talent, but they couldn't afford expensive piano lessons or a better piano at home. When Mrs. Patterson offered to give Lily free lessons during lunch break, her parents were incredibly grateful. The other students at Roosevelt Middle School started to notice Lily's talent too. During lunch, when she practiced in the music room, small groups of students would gather outside the door to listen. They would sit on the floor in the hallway, doing their homework or just chatting quietly while Lily's music played in the background. Some of them said it was the most peaceful part of their day. Tony, a 7th grader who was usually getting into trouble, started coming to the music room every day. He never said much, just sat in the back corner and listened. One day he told Lily that her music helped him feel calm when everything else in his life felt crazy. Rebecca, a quiet girl who ate lunch alone, started joining the group too. She said Lily's music made her feel less lonely. Word about Lily's talent spread beyond just the students. Other teachers started finding excuses to walk by the music room during lunch. The custodian, Mr. Garcia, would time his cleaning schedule so he could work near the music room when Lily was practicing. Even the school secretary, Ms. Johnson, would turn down her radio when she heard piano music drifting down the hallway. When the announcement came about the spring talent show, everyone immediately thought of Lily. Students started asking her if she was going to perform. At first, she was nervous about playing in front of such a big audience. The thought of being on stage in front of hundreds of people made her stomach feel funny. But Mrs. Patterson encouraged her to audition. "You have a gift, Lily," Mrs. Patterson said one afternoon as they sat in the music room. "Music is meant to be shared. When you play, you make people feel something special. That's not something you can learn from a book or practice until you get it right. That's something you're born with." Lily decided to audition with Chopin's Minute Waltz. It was a challenging piece that required both technical skill and emotional expression. She had been working on it for months, breaking it down into small sections and practicing each part until it was perfect. The piece had fast, dancing passages that made her fingers fly across the keys, and slower, more gentle sections that allowed her to show her musical sensitivity. The audition was held after school in the gymnasium. About 30 students showed up to try out for the talent show. There were singers, dancers, a boy who could solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute, and a girl who did magic tricks. When it was Lily's turn, she walked to the piano that had been brought in specially for the Auditions, she sat down, took a deep breath, and began to play. The gymnasium, which had been filled with chatter and nervous energy, became completely silent. Every person in that room was captivated by the music. Lily's fingers moved effortlessly across the keys, creating sounds that seemed to paint pictures in the air. Some of the younger students had never heard classical music before, but they found themselves completely mesmerized. When she finished playing, the silence continued for a moment. Then, slowly, applause began to build. The other students were clapping, the teachers were nodding with approval, and even some of the parents who had come to watch were wiping tears from their eyes. Mrs. Patterson beamed with pride from the back of the room. The results were announced a week later. Lily had not only made it into the talent show, but she had been selected as one of the featured performers. Her name was on the poster that went up in the main hallway, printed in bold letters alongside the date and time of the show. Students would stop and point at her name, giving her thumbs up or telling her how excited they were to see her perform. Lily's parents were thrilled when she told them the news. Her mother hugged her so tight she could barely breathe, and her father, who was usually quiet and tired after work, couldn't stop smiling. They started making plans to invite her grandmother, who had first taught her to play piano. They wanted to make sure all their relatives knew about the big day. The talent show was scheduled for a Friday evening in 3 weeks. Lily had plenty of time to prepare, but she wasn't taking any chances. She practiced every day after school, sometimes until the sun was setting and the school was getting dark. She worked on her posture, her finger positioning, and her breathing. She wanted everything to be perfect. Mrs. Patterson helped her think about the performance from every angle. They talked about how to handle nerves, how to recover if she made a mistake, and how to connect with the audience. Mrs. Patterson even borrowed a formal dress from her own daughter for Lily to wear during the performance. As the weeks passed, the excitement in the school continued to build. Students would ask Lily about her preparations, and some even requested that she play certain songs during her lunch practice sessions. The music room had become like a small concert hall, with regular attendees who came to listen and find peace. In the middle of their busy school day, Lily felt ready. She had practiced the piece hundreds of times, and she knew every note by heart. She could play it with her eyes closed, and sometimes she did. The music had become part of her, flowing through her fingers as naturally as breathing. She was excited to share her gift with the entire school community, to give them the same feeling of joy and peace that music had always given her. Little did she know that her biggest challenge wasn't going to be playing the piece perfectly or managing her nerves on stage. The real test was about to come from a direction she never expected, and it would change everything about her performance and her life at Roosevelt Middle School. It was Tuesday morning, just 3 days before the talent show, when Lily heard her name called over the school intercom. She was in math class, working on algebra problems, when the crackling voice of the school secretary filled the room. "Lily Chun, please report to the principal's office immediately." The entire class turned to look at her. Lily felt her cheeks turn red as she gathered her books. She couldn't think of anything she had done wrong. She always followed the rules, turned in her homework on time, and stayed out of trouble. Her teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, gave her an encouraging nod as she walked toward the door. "Don't worry, you'll be fine," he whispered as she passed his desk. The walk to the principal's office felt like it took forever. Lily's mind was racing with possibilities. Maybe they wanted to talk about her performance. Maybe they needed to change something about the talent show. Or maybe someone had complained about her practicing during lunch. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. The principal's office was at the end of a long hallway lined with trophy cases and photos of past graduating classes. Principal Williams had been at Roosevelt Middle School for 8 years. He was a tall man with gray hair who always wore suits that looked expensive. Most students were a little afraid of him because he had a serious face and rarely smiled. When Lily knocked on the door, she heard a deep voice say, "Come in." Principal Williams was sitting behind his large wooden desk, looking at some papers. He didn't look up when she entered. The office was decorated with certificates and awards, all hanging in perfect rows on the walls. There was a large American flag in the corner and a bookshelf filled with education books that looked like they had never been opened. "Sit down, Lily," he said, still not looking at her. She sat in the chair across from his desk, placing her backpack on the floor beside her. The chair was too big for her, making her feel even smaller than she already did. She waited for him to speak, but he continued reading his papers for what felt like several minutes. Finally, he looked up at her. His expression was cold and businesslike. "I've been reviewing the talent show program," he said, tapping his pen on the desk, "and I'm afraid we need to make some changes." Lily's stomach dropped. She had a terrible feeling about where this conversation was going. "What kind of changes?" she asked quietly. "Well, we've realized that the show is running too long. We need to cut some of the performances to keep it at a reasonable length. Unfortunately, your piano performance is one of the acts we need to remove." The words hit Lily like a punch to the stomach. She stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. But I auditioned. "I made it into the show?" Mrs. Patterson said. "I was one of the featured performers." Principal Williams leaned back in his chair, his expression unchanged. "I understand you're disappointed, but these decisions have to be made for the good of the overall program. We need to maintain a certain balance in our performances." "Balance?" Lily repeated, confused. "What do you mean?" "We need to showcase different types of talents. We already have several musical performances, and we want to give other students a chance to shine." But Lily knew this wasn't true. She had seen the program list. There were only 2 other musical performances, a group of girls singing a pop song and a boy playing guitar. Neither of them had the same level of skill or preparation that she had. "Can't you cut something else instead?" she asked, her voice starting to shake. "I've been practicing for months. Everyone is expecting me to perform." Principal Williams's face hardened. "The decision has been made, Lily. I'm sorry, but that's final." Lily felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she tried to hold them back. She didn't want to cry in front of him. "This isn't fair. I earned my spot in the show." "Life isn't always fair, young lady," Principal Williams said, turning his attention back to his papers. "You're dismissed." Lily sat there for a moment, stunned. She couldn't believe this was happening. Then, slowly, she picked up her backpack and walked out of the office. As soon as she was in the hallway, the tears she had been holding back started to fall. She didn't go back to math class. Instead, she walked to the music room, where she knew she could be alone. Mrs. Patterson was teaching a 6th grade class, so Lily sat in the small practice room next door. She put her head in her hands and let herself cry. When the bell rang for lunch, Mrs. Patterson found her there. "Lily, what's wrong, sweetheart?" Through her tears, Lily told her everything that had happened in the principal's office. As she spoke, she watched Mrs. Patterson's expression change from concern to confusion to anger. "He said what?" Mrs. Patterson asked, sitting down beside her. "He said the show was too long and they needed to cut some performances." "But Mrs. Patterson, I know that's not true. The show is the same length it was last year, and I checked the program. There are kids performing who aren't nearly as prepared as I am." Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said something that made Lily's heart sink even further. "Lily, I think there might be something else going on here." "What do you mean?" Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable, like she was trying to find the right words. "Have you noticed who else got cut from the show?" Lily shook her head. She had been so focused on her own disappointment that she hadn't thought about other students. Kevin Martinez got cut too. He's the boy who was going to do spoken word poetry. And so did Zara Okafor, who was going to perform a traditional dance from her family's culture. As Mrs. Patterson spoke, Lily began to understand what she was suggesting. Kevin was Hispanic, Zara was African American, and Lily was Asian American. Meanwhile, most of the students who remained in the show were white. "But that can't be right," Lily said. That would be discrimination." "I hope I'm wrong," Mrs. Patterson said sadly. "But I've been teaching here for a long time, and I've noticed some patterns in how certain decisions are made." Lily felt a different kind of hurt now. It wasn't just disappointment about missing the talent show. It was the realization that she might have been cut not because of anything she did wrong, but because of who she was. "What can we do?" she asked. Mrs. Patterson sighed. "I can try talking to him, but Principal Williams rarely changes his mind once he's made a decision. I can also talk to the other teachers, see if anyone else has noticed this pattern." That afternoon, word spread quickly through the school that several students had been cut from the talent show. The students who regularly came to listen to Lily practice were outraged. Tony, the 7th grader who found peace in her music, was so angry he got sent to the vice principal's office for arguing with a teacher about it. Rebecca, the quiet girl who ate lunch alone, surprised everyone by speaking up in her English class. "It's not fair what they did to Lily," she said. "She's the most talented person in this school." Even some of the teachers were talking about it. Mr. Garcia, the custodian, told anyone who would listen that cutting Lily from the show was the stupidest decision he'd ever seen the school make, but Principal Williams didn't seem to care about any of the complaints. When Mrs. Patterson went to his office to discuss the decision, he told her that it was final and that she needed to focus on her teaching duties rather than questioning administrative decisions. That evening, Lily sat at her old piano at home. The one with the sticky keys and the out-of-tune notes? She tried to play her piece, but her heart wasn't in it. What was the point of practicing if she wasn't going to perform? Her parents were furious when they found out what happened. Her mother wanted to call the school immediately, and her father talked about filing a complaint with the school district. But Lily asked them to wait. "Let me think about this," she said. "Maybe there's another way." That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Lily made a decision. She wasn't going to let Principal Williams's prejudice stop her from sharing her music. If he wouldn't let her perform in the official talent show, then she would find another way to let her voice be heard. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do yet, but she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going to give up without a fight. Lily couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about Principal Williams's cold voice and the unfairness of it all. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face telling her that her performance was cut. But somewhere in the middle of her anger and sadness, an idea began to form. The next morning, she woke up with a plan that made her heart race with excitement and fear at the same time. She was going to perform anyway, but not where Principal Williams expected. At school, Lily walked through the hallways looking at them differently than she ever had before. She noticed how sound carried from one end of the building to the other. She paid attention to where students gathered during lunch and where teachers spent their free time. Most importantly, she studied the main courtyard. The courtyard was right in the center of the school building. It was surrounded by classrooms on all 4 sides, with big windows that looked out onto the open space. During nice weather, some teachers would open their windows to let fresh air in. The courtyard had excellent acoustics, too, she had noticed. This before when she heard students talking there during her classes. During lunch, Lily sat with her friend Danny, who was known as the school's computer expert. Danny could fix any technology problem and knew more about computers than some of the teachers. He was also one of the students who came to listen to her practice regularly. "Danny," she said quietly, "I need your help with something." Danny looked up from his sandwich. "What's going on?" "You look like you're planning something." Lily looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "What do you know about the school's internet and Wi-Fi?" "Why do you want to know?" Danny asked, curious. "Just trust me. How does it work?" Danny pushed his glasses up his nose, the way he always did when he was thinking about technology. "Well, the school has a pretty basic setup. All the Wi-Fi runs through a main router in the computer lab. During busy times, like when everyone's trying to use their phones at lunch, it gets pretty slow." "What would happen if a lot of people tried to use the internet at the same time?" "It would probably crash," Danny said. "The system isn't designed for heavy traffic. Why are you asking?" Lily took a deep breath. "I'm going to perform my piano piece anyway." In the courtyard, during the talent show on Friday. Danny's eyes widened. "Are you serious? You could get in huge trouble." "I'm already in trouble," Lily said. "They cut me from the show for no good reason. But I'm not going to let that stop." Me from sharing my music? She explained her plan to Danny. She wanted to set up her digital piano in the courtyard during the talent show and perform her piece. She hoped that students would notice and maybe watch from the windows or come outside. But she needed Danny's help to make it bigger than that. What if we could get people to share it online? She asked. Like, what if students recorded it and posted it on social media? Danny was quiet for a moment, thinking. That could work, he said slowly. But if enough people start sharing at the same time, it might overload the school's internet. Would that be bad? It depends on how you look at it, Danny said with a small smile. It would definitely get people's attention. That afternoon, Lily went to Mrs. Patterson and told her about the plan. She expected her teacher to tell her it was too risky, but Mrs. Patterson surprised her. I think it's brilliant, she said. But are you sure you want to do this? Principal Williams is going to be very angry. I don't care, Lily said. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about Kevin and Zara and all the other students who got treated unfairly. If I don't stand up now, who will? Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Can you help me get my digital piano to school? And maybe, could you make sure other teachers know what's happening? I'll talk to some of the teachers I trust, Mrs. Patterson said. Quietly, I think you'll be surprised by how many people support you. That evening, Lily sat down with her parents to explain everything. She told them about the plan, about why she felt she had to do it, and about the risk she was taking. Her mother looked worried. Lily, this could affect your grades. What if they suspend you? Then at least I'll know I stood up for what's right, Lily said. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. Her father was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Your grandmother always told me that music is meant to bring people together, not divide them. If this is what you feel you need to do, then we support you. Her mother sighed, but she was smiling. You're braver than I was at your age. Just promise me you'll be careful. The next day was Thursday, one day before the talent show. Word about Lily's plan had spread quietly through the school. Students who supported her would give her encouraging looks in the hallways. Tony came up to her between classes and said, Whatever you're planning, I'm with you. Rebecca, who rarely spoke to anyone, stopped her after English class. My older sister goes to high school, she said quietly. She has a lot of followers on social media. If you want, I can ask her to help spread the word. Even some of the teachers were showing their support in small ways. Mr. Rodriguez, her math teacher, wished her good luck when she left his class. The art teacher, Miss Kim, gave her a thumbs up in the hallway, but not everyone was supportive. Some students thought she was being disrespectful to the school. A few parents had heard about the plan and complained to the administration. Principal Williams called her parents that evening. I understand your daughter is planning some kind of disruption during our talent show, he said in his cold voice. I want to make it clear that any student who disrupts school events will face serious consequences. Lily's mother was polite but firm. My daughter has every right to express herself as long as she's not hurting anyone or breaking any laws. She's on school property, Principal Williams said. I can have her removed. The courtyard is open to all students, Lily's father added. If she's not disrupting classes or being dangerous, I don't see how you can stop her. After the phone call, Lily's parents sat with her again. Are you absolutely sure about this? Her mother asked. Lily nodded. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Friday morning arrived with perfect weather. It was sunny and warm, with a gentle breeze that made the trees around the courtyard sway softly. Lily went to her regular classes, but she could barely concentrate. Her mind was on the performance she would give in just a few hours. During lunch, Danny came to find her. I've been thinking about the internet thing, he said. I know how to monitor the school's network traffic. If things get crazy online, I can track what's happening. You don't have to do that, Lily said. I want to, Danny replied. What you're doing is important. Besides, I'm curious to see what happens when a bunch of middle schoolers try to upload videos at the same time. Mrs. Patterson helped Lily move her digital piano to a storage room near the courtyard. They also brought a small portable speaker to make sure the sound would carry well. Everything was ready. As the final bell rang that afternoon, Lily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness that made her hands shake slightly. Students were heading to the gymnasium for the official talent show, but she was going in the opposite direction. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her that music was a gift meant to be shared. She thought about all the students who had been treated unfairly. She thought about Mrs. Patterson's support and her parents' pride. Most of all, she thought about the music itself, the beautiful piece she had worked so hard to perfect, the melody that deserved to be heard regardless of one person's prejudice. As she walked toward the courtyard, carrying her digital piano with Mrs. Patterson's help, Lily knew that whatever happened next, she was doing the right thing. She was about to turn a moment of discrimination into a moment of triumph, and she was ready. The official talent show was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock in the gymnasium. By 6:30, most of the school had emptied out as students and parents made their way to the big event. But Lily was heading in the opposite direction, toward the quiet courtyard in the center of the building. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Mrs. Patterson walked beside her, carrying the portable speaker while Lily managed her digital piano. The hallways felt eerily quiet, with only the distant sound of people gathering in the gymnasium. "Are you nervous?" Mrs. Patterson asked softly. "Terrified," Lily admitted, "but also excited." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," her teacher smiled. "That's how you know you're doing something that matters." They reached the courtyard just as the sun was starting to set. The space looked different in the evening light, more magical somehow, with long shadows stretching across the ground and the windows of the surrounding classrooms glowing softly. Lily set up her digital piano in the center of the courtyard, right where she had planned. She connected it to the speaker and did a quick sound check. The notes echoed beautifully off the walls of the building, just as she had hoped. "The acoustics are perfect," she whispered to Mrs. Patterson. Meanwhile, Danny was in the computer lab, monitoring the school's internet traffic on his laptop. He had volunteered to stay behind and track what happened online during Lily's performance. He sent her a quick text. "Everything looks normal so far. Good luck." At exactly 7 o'clock, as the official talent show was beginning in the gymnasium, Lily sat down at her digital piano. She took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play Chopin's Minute Waltz. The first notes drifted across the courtyard and through the open windows of the surrounding classrooms. In the computer lab, Danny looked up from his laptop when he heard the music. In the teacher's lounge, Miss Kim stopped grading papers and smiled. Mr. Garcia, who was cleaning nearby, paused with his mop and listened, but the real magic started happening in the classrooms, where after-school activities were taking place. Students in detention looked up from their homework when they heard the beautiful melody. The chess club stopped their game mid-move. The drama club, rehearsing for their spring play, fell silent. One by one, faces began appearing at the windows. Students pressed against the glass, watching in amazement as Lily played. Some of them pulled out their phones and started recording. Tony, who had been in detention for arguing with a teacher about Lily's situation, was the first to quietly slip out of his classroom. He stood at the edge of the courtyard listening, with tears in his eyes. Soon, Rebecca joined him, having convinced her study group to come outside. "She's incredible," Rebecca whispered. Word spread quickly through the building. Students started leaving their after-school activities to come watch. Teachers who had stayed late to grade papers or prepare lessons found themselves drawn to their windows. Even the security guard, Mr. Thompson, stopped his rounds to listen. In the gymnasium, the official talent show was in full swing. Principal Williams stood at the back of the auditorium, watching the performances with satisfaction. He had no idea what was happening just a few hundred feet away, but some of the audience members in the gymnasium were getting text messages from friends who had stayed behind. "You have to see this," one message read. "Lily is performing in the courtyard, and it's amazing." A few parents slipped out of the talent show to investigate. When they saw what was happening, they called their friends. "You won't believe what's going on at the school right now," they whispered into their phones. Danny, watching his laptop screen in the computer lab, started to see the internet traffic increase. Students were uploading videos to social media, sharing them with friends and tagging them with hashtags like hashtag #LetLilyPlay and hashtag #TalentShowJustice. "This is incredible," Danny muttered to himself as he watched the numbers climb. Rebecca's older sister had kept her promise. She shared one of the videos on her social media accounts, and her followers immediately started sharing it too. The video began spreading beyond just the school community. Back in the courtyard, Lily was completely lost in her music. She had practiced this piece so many times that her fingers knew every note by heart, but tonight felt different. Tonight she was playing not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly. Every note carried her frustration, her determination, and her hope. The crowd around the courtyard continued to grow. Students were sitting on the ground, standing against the walls, and hanging out of windows. Some had brought blankets and made themselves comfortable, as if they were at an outdoor concert. Mrs. Patterson watched from the side, her eyes filled with pride. She had taught music for over 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The way Lily connected with her audience, the way the music seemed to bring everyone together. It was magical. As Lily reached the most challenging part of the piece, where her fingers had to dance across the keys at lightning speed, the crowd held its breath. She executed every difficult passage flawlessly, her hands moving like they were floating over the keys. Meanwhile, Danny was watching his screen in amazement. The school's internet was getting slower and slower as more people shared videos and tried to upload content. "The network is getting hammered," he said to himself with a grin. The videos were spreading faster than anyone had expected. Parents were sharing them on their social media accounts. Students were sending them to friends at other schools. Local news stations were starting to pick up the story. Middle school student performs after being unfairly cut from talent show. Read one social media post that was being shared hundreds of times. In the gymnasium, Principal Williams was starting to notice that some of his audience members were distracted. People were checking their phones, whispering to each other, and some had even left the auditorium entirely. He couldn't understand what was happening. The current performer on stage, a girl singing a pop song, was having trouble with the microphone. The sound system was acting up, cutting in and out. Principal Williams didn't realize that the school's overloaded. Internet was affecting other electronic systems too. Back in the courtyard, Lily was approaching the end of her piece. The final section was slower and more emotional, requiring her to pour her heart into every note. As she played, she thought about her grandmother, who had first taught her to love music. She thought about all the students who were watching, and all the people who might see the videos later. She thought about Principal Williams, and how his attempt to silence her had actually made her voice stronger. As the last note echoed across the courtyard, there was a moment of complete silence. Then slowly, applause began to build. It started with the people closest to her and spread outward like ripples on a pond. Soon, the entire courtyard was filled with cheering and clapping. Students were shouting, "Bravo!" and "That was amazing!" Some were crying, others were laughing with joy. The sound of their appreciation echoed through the building. In the computer lab, Danny watched as his screen showed the school's internet finally overloading completely. The network crashed, taking down the school's Wi-Fi and even affecting the website. "She did it," he said with a huge smile. She actually crashed the whole system. But the real crash wasn't just technical. Lily's performance had crashed through the barriers of unfairness and prejudice. She had turned a moment of discrimination into a moment of triumph, and the whole world was starting to notice. As the applause continued, Lily stood up from her piano bench and smiled. She had done it. She had shared her music, stood up for what was right, and brought her community together. Whatever happened next, she knew she had made a difference. The applause was still echoing through the courtyard when Principal Williams burst through the doors, his face red with anger. He had finally figured out why half his audience had disappeared from the talent show and why the school's sound system was malfunctioning. "What is the meaning of this?" he shouted, his voice cutting through the cheering crowd. The students and teachers fell silent, but they didn't move away from Lily. Instead, they seemed to form a protective circle around her. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, placing herself between the principal and her student. Lily was simply sharing her musical talent, Mrs. Patterson said calmly. I don't see anything wrong with that. She's disrupting a school event. She's trespassing. Principal Williams stopped mid-sentence when he noticed several parents. In the crowd, some of them filming his outburst with their phones. Lily stood up from her piano bench, her legs shaking but her voice steady. I'm not disrupting anything, Mr. Williams. I'm in a public area of the school, and I'm not bothering anyone. I'm just playing music. You were supposed to be cut from the program. He snapped, momentarily forgetting that there were witnesses around. The words hung in the air like a confession. Several parents exchanged shocked looks. Mrs. Patterson raised her eyebrows. Even some of the students gasped. Cut for what reason exactly? Asked Dr. Martinez, Kevin's mother, who had come to see what all the excitement was about. As a lawyer, she recognized the significance of what the principal had just said. Principal Williams realized his mistake, but it was too late. The damage was done. That's an administrative decision, he stammered. Based on what criteria? Dr. Martinez pressed. Because my son was also cut from the show, and I'd love to hear your explanation. By now, Danny had arrived from the computer lab, his laptop under his arm. Principal Williams, he said with a grin, you might want to check the school's website and maybe look at social media. The principal pulled out his phone and his face went from red to white in seconds. The school's website was completely down. When he checked social media, he saw hundreds of videos of Lily's performance spreading across every platform. The hashtags #LetLilyPlay and #TalentShowJustice were trending locally, and the story was spreading far beyond their small town. This is a disaster, he muttered under his breath, but for everyone else it was the opposite. Of a disaster? Local news stations had already picked up the story. A reporter from Channel 7 News was driving to the school. The story was being shared by parents, students, teachers, and even strangers who were moved by Lily's courage. The next morning, Lily woke up to find her phone buzzing with notifications. The video of her performance had been viewed over 50,000 times overnight. Messages of support were pouring in from around the country. Music teachers from other schools were calling her an inspiration. Professional musicians were sharing her story. At school, everything felt different. Students who had never talked to Lily before were coming up to congratulate her. Teachers were giving her encouraging smiles in the hallways, even the cafeteria. Workers were telling her how proud they were, but the biggest change was happening in the administrative offices. Dr. Patricia Hayes, the district superintendent, had arrived at Roosevelt Middle School first thing Monday morning. She was not happy with what she had learned over the weekend. Principal Williams was called into a meeting that lasted 3 hours. When it was over, Dr. Hayes asked to speak with Lily, her parents, Mrs. Patterson, and the families of the other students who had been cut from the talent show. I want to apologize personally for what happened, Dr. Hayes said, sitting across from them in the school library. After reviewing the situation, it's clear that some very poor decisions were made, and they appear to have been made for the wrong reasons. Lily's mother spoke up. What are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Several things, Dr. Hayes replied. First, we're going to review all of Principal Williams's recent decisions to see if there's a pattern of discrimination. Second, we're implementing new policies to ensure that talent show selections are made fairly and transparently. And third, we're going to have mandatory training for all administrators on equity and inclusion. What about Principal Williams? Asked Dr. Martinez. He's being reassigned to a position where he won't be making decisions that directly affect students, Dr. Hayes said diplomatically, but the changes went beyond just administrative consequences. The story of Lily's courage had inspired people throughout the school district. Other students began speaking up about unfair treatment they had experienced. Teachers started having conversations about bias and inclusion in their classrooms. 2 weeks later, the school district organized a special arts celebration event. It was designed to showcase the talents of all students with special recognition. For those who had been unfairly excluded from the original talent show, Lily was invited to be the featured performer. The evening of the art celebration, the gymnasium was packed. Local news cameras were there to cover the event. The mayor had come to present Lily with a key to the city. But most importantly, Lily's grandmother was there, sitting in the front row with tears of pride in her eyes when Lily walked onto the stage. The entire audience rose to their feet before she had even played a single note. The applause lasted for several minutes. When it finally died down, Lily sat at the beautiful grand piano that had been brought in specially for the event. "This piece is dedicated to everyone who has ever felt like their voice didn't matter," she said into the microphone. But our voices do matter. And sometimes we have to be brave enough to let them be heard. She began playing the same Chopin piece she had performed in the courtyard, but somehow it sounded even more beautiful on the big stage. Every note was perfect, every emotion crystal clear. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted so long that her fingers started to cramp from waving to the audience. After the performance, reporters asked Lily what she had learned from the whole experience. "I learned that one person's prejudice doesn't have to define your worth," she said. "I also learned that when you stand up for what's right, you're never really standing alone. People will support you in ways you never expected." Mrs. Patterson, who was standing nearby, wiped tears from her eyes. "I've been teaching for over 20 years, she told a reporter, "and Lily has taught me more about courage than I ever taught her about music." The impact of Lily's story continued to spread. She received letters from students around the world who had faced similar situations. Music teachers began using her story as an example of how to persevere in the face of adversity. A scholarship fund was established in her name to help students from underrepresented communities pursue their artistic dreams. Principal Williams was quietly transferred to a desk job at the district office, where he couldn't make decisions that affected students. The new principal, Ms. Chun, made it her first priority to create an inclusive environment where all students felt valued and heard. But perhaps the most important change was in Lily herself. She had discovered that her voice was powerful not just when she played piano, but when she stood up for justice. She began speaking at other schools about the importance of inclusion and fairness. She started a music program for younger students who couldn't afford lessons. Years later, when Lily looked back on that Friday evening in the courtyard, she realized it had been the most important performance of her life. Not because of the music itself, but because of what the music represented. It was the moment she learned that talent, combined with courage, could change the world. And every time she sat down at a piano, she remembered the lesson that experience had taught her: when you play from your heart and stand up for what's right, your music will always find its audience.